I recently had one of the most important meetings of my music career, and it was with a gentleman who had broken one of the world's biggest artists in the history of breaking artists, and one of the world's biggest producers in the history of breaking producers. And we were presenting our music, and it was my lovely, extremely talented girlfriend who had coordinated it, and who had made it happen. And I was in this meeting, and I was told one of the most precious pieces of advice I've ever received as a producer and an engineer, but especially a producer. And that piece of advice is that the compounded use of exceptional tools creates potency. The compounding use of exceptional tools creates potency. So, what does that mean? Obviously, it's not extremely clear, abundantly clear right away, but it became clearer to me as I had the conversation with the person, and we kind of got into the nitty gritty of production and how to improve quality and all that. If you just use the same tools everybody else has, you can make only as good a song or track as the next person with the exact same skills that you do. But when you expand, when you get into using analog gear, when you get into using synthesizers, using real guitars, recording the music you make into your DAW, that's when you start to really truly craft your sound as a producer, as an engineer, or as a creative person. Now, some of you may think, of course, I can use digital synthesizers, I can use, samples, and I can use all this stuff, and I can get really great results. There is some truth to that. But the best producers in the world that I've ever worked with, that I've ever been around, they always have a keyboard player around them who uses synthesizers, or they have a guitarist around them who can record guitar extremely well, or somebody to create something special that they can taste make or that they can produce or guide, or they are that person themselves. You look at somebody like Calvin Harris, you look at the examples are insanely abundant of people who use synthesizers. Now, if you don't play an instrument, why synthesizers in particular are a tool that applies to this saying, this incredible commentary and constructive criticism of compounded use of exceptional tools creating potency, why synthesizers apply to that more than anything is because you don't have to play piano to use a synthesizer. If you're good with MIDI, if you can click in MIDI and you can send MIDI out of your computer into your synthesizer and you really learn the sound design part of using a synthesizer, of using a Prophet, of using an OB6, or using a Polybrute, if you can get into understanding how to create a sound, what you're looking for, feel the things that you're changing, feel them, use your hands, get in there. The physicality of the expression of creating music, really making it, crafting it, that is so valuable to us as creative people. It just is. We are only but so capable of creating timeless records if we are not applying ourselves into the process. Now, exceptional tools, what does that mean? Now, that could sound expensive, and synthesizers are not cheap. But at the end of the day, we do spend a lot of money on our setups. Now, where should we be spending our money if we're producers? If we're producers and we're not mixing and we're not focusing on mastering, and even if we are mixing and focusing on mastering, our monitors are very, very, very important tools to have for us. But as producers, our instruments are the most important part of your process as producers. The tools you have to make music with are the most important part of your process. Of course, your room needs to be treated. Of course, you need monitors that are good enough, even if they're two ways, as long as they're good ones. If they're Neumann two ways, or even the Kali seem to be doing well with people, right? I know that there's a lot of options out there to get good enough results. Focus on being dope creatively. Focus on that. First and foremost, as a producer, that is your job to do. That is what you have to focus on. Using the tools and putting that cash that you have. Alternatively, instead of spending it on a mix bus processor to get your mix sharper, don't worry about that. Put it into the synthesizer. Get the guitar. Back there, you can't see them behind my chair, I guess, but I make sure that if I'm using a guitar, I'm using my Les Paul or my Stratocaster, and I'm putting it through pedals, and I'm trying to be creative with how I make the sounds that come into my DAW in order to match my taste. I don't even play guitar. I don't even know how to play it properly. Okay? I am a keyboardist. I'm a piano player. I use that as much as I can when I'm synthesizing. Essentially, I invest in the tools that I have creatively as a producer. If you're a mixer, if you're a mastering engineer, your speakers and your room treatment are going to be the most important things for you. Your converter shortly after, your computer, of course, other things. But if you're a producer and mixing is secondary, be ready to invest in exceptional tools. Now, the compounding use over time thing is because a lot of people think they can just buy a piece of gear and they're going to immediately be better for it. Okay? You're not going to be immediately better for investing in good equipment. It doesn't work like that. Can it improve, your workflow right away? Sometimes, in some ways, yes. If you buy a really good converter and you're working on a really bad one, you're all of a sudden going to be hearing a lot of stuff. And that's going to be a learning curve, but it's going to feel amazing. And it'll make you a better engineer immediately. But buying an instrument, buying something that makes sound, buying a drum set or a guitar or a keyboard or a synthesizer or whatever it is that you're buying, a drum machine, which I highly recommend buying as well, that is not going to change your life right away, but it's the compounded use of it over time. If you spend 2 years with some really good synthesizers, some really good music making machines, some guitars, keys, whatever it is, amps, simulators, whatever, if you use them for 2 years, if you use them for a couple years straight, it's the use of them every single day. It's using them while other people are not using them every single day for a couple years. The compounded use of that instrument and learning it and incorporating it into your process, that is what creates potency. That's what creates powerful, tasteful music. Music that properly reflects who you are as a producer, who you are as a writer, who you are as an engineer. That's what's going to do it for you. So that really, really resonated and sat well with me. I will never forget that piece of advice from this gentleman who really has been able to produce a lot of incredible acts and records and do his thing. Hopefully this helps and sheds some light on something for you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and ciao.